Hi biology students, it's Mrs. Lewis. This is Chapter 8 and your final section, Section 3. It's all about cellular respiration. Now before I go any farther, I think it's important to note that there are many different steps when it comes to photosynthesis. Krebs cycle, glycolysis, which we haven't discussed yet, and electron transport. In this section, we're kind of going to get a jumbled mess when talking about cellular respiration and pull in everything we've already sort of discussed from the chapter. So if this gets too confusing, feel free to come in and have a discussion with me. Write down your questions on your notes, and then I can answer those every morning when you come into school, or stay after. So this looks familiar, right? Organisms obtain energy in a process called cellular respiration. Respiration harvests electrons from organic molecules and uses the energy to make ATP. The equation for cellular respiration is the opposite of the equation for photosynthesis, as you saw from the amoeba sisters in the last video. Cellular respiration occurs in two main parts, glycolysis and aerobic respiration. Glycolysis is an anaerobic process, meaning it does not require oxygen. Aerobic respiration involves the Krebs cycle and electron transport. The aerobic process requires oxygen. Glucose is broken down into the cytoplasm through the process of glycolysis. 2 molecules of ATP and 2 molecules of NADH are formed for each molecule of glucose that is broken down. Don't forget, be coloring your notes, and if you cannot see what these say in your notes very easily, you'll need to write them on there. So back to Krebs cycle. Glycolysis has a net result of 2 ATP and 2 pyruvate. Most of the energy from the glucose is still contained in the pyruvate. In the presence of oxygen, pyruvate is transported into the mitochondrial matrix where it is converted into carbon dioxide. Again, take a look at last video for 8.2 if you've forgotten that. The series of reactions in which pyruvate is broken down into carbon dioxide is the Krebs cycle, also known as tricarboxylic acid, or TCA cycle. So here's some more specific steps of the Krebs cycle, and you can always go through YouTube and take a look at some different videos than the ones I've already posted. But prior to the Krebs cycle, pyruvate reacts with the coenzyme A to form acetyl-CoA. Acetyl-CoA moves into the mitochondrial matrix. Acetyl-CoA combines with a 4-carbon compound to form citric acid. Citric acid is broken down, releasing 2 molecules of carbon dioxide and generating 1 ATP, 3 NADH, and 1 FADH2. Finally, acetyl-CoA and citric acid are generated and the cycle continues. I know again that this is overwhelming, but if you kind of think about steps or directions and how to get somewhere, that's a good way to think about this. It's just a set of directions. So in aerobic respiration, electron transport is the final step in the breakdown of glucose. NADH and FADH2 from the Krebs cycle are used to convert ADP to ATP, energy. Electron transport and chemiosmosis in aerobic respiration are similar to the process of photosynthesis. Some prokaryotes undergo aerobic respiration. They do not have mitochondria, so they use the cellular membrane as the location of electron transport. When oxygen is unavailable, cells cannot follow glycolysis with the aerobic respiration, Krebs cycle, and electron transport. The anaerobic process that follows glycolysis is anaerobic respiration or fermentation. Fermentation occurs in the cytoplasm of the cell and produces NAD and ATP. Enzymes convert pyruvate made during glycolysis into lactic acid. Skeletal muscles produce lactic acid when the body cannot supply enough oxygen, such as during periods of strenuous exercise. If you've ever lifted weights and maybe they call it shredding muscle, okay? So you're breaking down your muscle in order for it to grow back bigger and stronger and larger in mass than it was previous to you breaking down or shredding your muscles. What the scientific term for shredding muscles is, or the breaking down of muscles so that you can build them back up, is lactic acid fermentation. Alcohol fermentation occurs in yeast and some bacteria. It converts pyruvate into ethyl alcohol and carbon dioxide. So here you can see two pictures of photosynthesis and cellular respiration happening in one screen. I prefer a movie because that means so much more to me. I can understand it better than a picture. If you're like me, go back, take a look at the Amoeba Sister videos, Crash Course, Khan Academy, and a slew of other videos you can find on the web. And I'm always here available to help you and tutor you through this process. There is a virtual lab available to you through your online textbook on Chapter 8, Section 3, and it's Energy in the Cell. And so if you want to do that virtual lab, I think that you would enjoy that, and that's something that you can do on your own at home, or you can come in and use one of the school's computers.
One way of creating ATP energy, a very efficient way at that. But like we had said at the beginning, all cells have to make ATP energy. The way they do it, though, can differ. If there is no oxygen available, some cells have the ability to perform a process known as fermentation. It's not nearly as efficient, but hey, it makes ATP when there's no oxygen. Now, we really can't emphasize enough how important the process of making ATP energy is. If you doubt how powerful it is, consider cyanide. This toxin is found in some rat poisons. It is highly toxic. It works by blocking a step in the electron transport chain. And without being able to continue the electron transport chain, cells can't produce their ATP. And this poison is deadly in a very short time frame. There is also a demand for increased research on various mitochondrial disorders. Mitochondria are so essential for ATP production in humans that many mitochondrial disorders can be deadly. We are confident that the understanding of how to treat these disorders will continue to improve as more people, like you, ask questions.